Hello, my name's Heather and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing my 48-hour Bookopoly Readathon wrap-up. If you didn't join in on all the fun, I definitely recommend that you still go search it and check it out, look at the playlist. There was literally 48 hours of reading sprints with little breaks in between during the videos where the host would do fun things with the audience. I highly recommend, at least if you're only going to check out one of the live streams, to go and watch Gavin and Alexandra's live stream, because their games were absolutely amazing. And at one point I challenged Gavin to do the challenge he had just done blindfolded, and there was 3 or 4 other people that suggested the same exact thing at the same time. So Gavin did a book grabbing challenge blindfolded while holding a drink, and he had already been drinking for a few hours. He broke a gnome. It was a lot of fun. So if you're gonna go watch one, please go watch that one. That will kind of give you a feel of how the rest of the readathon was for all the sprints. I had so much fun. I definitely want to do it again. I may have even enjoyed it being so brief and really feeling the challenge of trying to complete all of these prompts in such a short time than I would have enjoyed a month-long readathon. There will be a month-long version happening, I believe, in September. So keep your eye out for that. I will for sure be participating whenever it does come around. I might create my own version of Becca's Bookopoly for my personal board if it kind of goes like last year, where you get a little bit more picks and individualization of your options for the readathon. Without further ado, I want to get into the books that I chose for each prompt and how I felt about them. Prompts 1 and 2 were to read a book under 300 pages and to read a book with a godlike character, or religious theme or element. For that, I chose She Wore Red Trainers. I did a full vlog of this book where I took out quotes, talked about the characters, pretty much broke down every single chapter until the second half of the book, where I just summed that portion up. So if you want to go see that, then you can definitely go do it. It is called She Wore Red Trainers, and I will probably put a card at the end of the video so you can just click on it if you want to go watch that. I had a lot of fun reading this book, but also for it being a readathon, it really slowed me down. It took me forever to get through. There was nothing wrong with the writing style. There was a lot of language that I was not familiar with, where there was words that had 15 letters or phrases that were very long, and because I wasn't sure of the pronunciation of the words, I couldn't voice them in my head. And I voice every single word in my head when I read, so it really slowed me down, and I just started kind of hopping a lot of them, and my brain just used context clues to figure out what they mean. Now, I really enjoyed that they were in there because it made the Muslim rep feel more authentic to have all of the slang included. There's also a guide in the back, which I did use for some of the smaller words that I could better conceptualize and remember. So if you want to learn some of the slang, then you will definitely get it in here, and some of it you will need to look at the guide to understand what is being said. As far as Muslim representation goes, I am not Muslim. However, I have read a few books with Muslim rep that I felt were great, but that were also only surface level, where it only dealt with one element of the religion or the religious practices, such as fasting. This book does mention fasting very, very briefly. It more so focuses on prayer and the relationship with Allah. It also has to do with family. It also talks about the characters' past when they weren't following Islam, and then how their life is different now that they are. None of the characters have any animosity toward the religion itself, whereas in other books tend to have a bit of a more westernized view with the teenage Muslim characters, who do get angry at a lot of the things that they are required to do or not do, such as not being allowed to date. The story is a romance, but it is as squeaky clean as you could possibly have it. Because they are Muslim, they have strict rules, such as not being able to give each other a second glance, so there's no prolonged eye contact. There's absolutely no touching, not even a handshake. It is not allowed. The only time that you are able to have sit-down conversations with a person who is not in your family is if you have literally decided that the other person is a potential marriage match. And those meetings will likely be supervised by a family member. And then it is pretty much decided by the man if he would like to pursue anything further. And then the next step is marriage. There's not any traditional Western style dating around. It's just you make a commitment and you get married. I enjoyed this book. I liked that the characters did stick to their faith and they kept everything halal, which basically means like good and pleasing to their God. So they didn't go outside the bounds of that. Whereas again, with the other books, sometimes with the Muslim rep, there is like a kiss when the characters are not married, which completely goes against what is supposed to happen. Is it realistic? Yes. Do I like when there's a kiss because I read romances for the kisses? Yes. But at the same time, if I was a Muslim teen, this book right here that actually kept everything halal would please me so much because I would see that it was possible to actually follow all of the rules. I won't go into any more depth about this book other than to say that I rated it 4 stars. So if you want to know all of the ins and outs along with quotes and basically a chapter by chapter play by play and all the things that I learned while reading this book, including events that happened in London where the book is set, then you have to go check out my vlog. Prompts 3 and 4 was to read an ebook or audiobook. And that book also needed to have a color in it if you wanted to combine the prompts like I did. So I picked Bound by Red, which is an ebook that I had on my phone. I just started searching colors and it was one of the first ones that popped up. And it also happened to only be 98 pages. So that definitely helped me finish the prompt quickly and get back on track because the first book took me a long time to read. I am a very slow reader. It takes me about an hour to read 33 pages in a novel, 50 if it's the absolute best writing ever, but I'm pretty much never going to read more than 50 pages an hour. So having a 98 page book was absolutely perfect. I stayed up late into the night reading this one. It had a werewolf who was also in his residency to become a doctor, and the main female character was a computer science type person, so she was very techie, she was writing code, just super smart. There was a dom submissive relationship, so if you like that sort of thing with BDSM, then it is in there. Because the book is so small, there's one scene where she is dreaming and fantasizing that's super spicy, and then there is a scene that's like the real thing that's super spicy. So if you don't like spice, then this is definitely not the story for you. But if you do like some spice, you'll definitely feel fulfilled reading this story. As for the plot, it was a lot of fun. You see her with this guy she's really not meant to be with, and it's pretty obvious. He makes a lot of assumptions about her and pretty much thinks that she's a submissive without ever asking her or even knowing that she was involved in that world in the past. She stopped being involved in the whole dom sub thing because she was just getting into abusive relationships where she really had no say in anything and lost her own individuality, which is why she went away from that. However, he drags her back into that world, and you can see that their relationship is kind of toxic. And then she is starting to imagine this other guy. So in the very first chapter, she runs over a dog, but that dog is a werewolf who wakes up in her bed completely naked the next day. And she's like, what in the world just happened? why? Where's the dog? What did you do with the dog? And why are you naked in my bed? And she's like got a bat and everything. She wants to hit him with it. It was a lot of fun, and also the ending. So much drama. So much drama. There's a cabin, there's woods, there's all of the nature things that can happen and go wrong with it. I was definitely on the edge of my seat. There were a few grammatical errors where the word choices, the tense was wrong, or the word was just slightly off from what it should have been. It had been edited, as referenced at the end of the book. They had talked about their editor. I was able to look past the topographical typos, whatever you want to call them. I was able to look past that because I really enjoyed the story. However, if you are like grammar police and it's going to really irk you every time you hit an error, then after about the 50% mark, that's when the errors start showing up. So this might not be the one for you. I would honestly read another story from this author. I enjoyed it, and I wound up giving it 3 stars. For prompt 5 and 6, I needed to pick a spooky book that was also young adult. I chose Cast No Shadow, mostly because I don't have a lot of spooky books on my shelf. I have like one adult spooky book that I know of, and also I really needed a graphic novel because it would be short and easy to fly through. This one definitely was easy to fly through. I enjoyed the reading experience overall, especially the first half of the book. I liked the characters. They were quirky. They were funny. The main guy was born without a shadow, which made him kind of weird. And then the town is a little weird itself because they continue to get these largest in the world attractions, like largest in the world ketchup bottle or hairball. It was just like kind of outlandish and stupid. So it was a bit of stupid humor, but I did enjoy it. The one main criticism that I have for this book is that some of the characters were very stereotypical. In some ways, I didn't really mind it. Like the girl that was a little more on the curvy side, that was the best friend. She was like the big girl that could pack a punch. Like she could punch you in the face, but she wasn't a bully, because that typically is a stereotype where if there's ever like a fat character in a book, they're usually the villain or the bully, or they're seen as ugly and all these other like gross things. This girl, she does punch. She throws some punches. She gets a little violent, but she fights against bullies. So she only ever does it against the bad people. And there was a scene where you see her starting to develop an interest in this other guy who's a jock, and she gets all dressy and kind of feminine, and then the friend is like, "What are you doing? Why do you look like that?" And I think that that is something that tomboys experience, where they're normally not like super girly, but then when they get a crush, they kind of feel like they need to do that. So I definitely only really dressed up when I would go on dates and stuff. So I get it, and I liked having her in there, and I liked that she was seen as attractive by a guy that would be considered the envy of all. So I really enjoyed that. I probably would have liked it more if it was the best friend that started to see her in a new light, not because she changed anything, but just because he's getting older and feelings start to happen. I would have really liked that. Plus size girl with her best friend, yes! Anyway, there was a romance in here for both of the characters. This guy with the ghost that he sees in this abandoned house that's been sitting there for probably 100 years or more. And then, of course, the romance with the popular guy and then his best friend. Now, the bad thing, again with the stereotypes, is that the guy who's the envy of all, that everyone fawns over and just thinks is amazing, he is written as the epitome of dumb jock. Like, he is just dumb as a pair of socks. He's not intelligent at all whatsoever, and I get that the dumb jock is an easy go-to, especially when you're writing, like, if this were middle grades, for instance, I would expect that. This is a YA book. I would think it would be slightly more mature than to have such a stereotypical character, but I wouldn't have been as angry about it if it didn't also perpetualize the stereotype of black people being either dumb or violent, because the dumb jock was also black. And the only other character that was a person of color was his father, who was also super dumb and overly emotional and just crying when the hairball goes away. That was his main attraction, because he wants to draw people to the town over his attraction. And I liked that the dad was a mayor, so it showed a black person in a position of power, but then it was just kind of like plummeted because of the fact that he was so dumb. It took away from having that representation and going against the grain, and just ruined it by doing that. Then there's also mention in this book about the haunted house being on top of Native American burial grounds, and also the site of Civil War. And there's like a party that happens at the end of this where they're all dressed up, and then the ghost of the Native Americans and Civil War people like rise up. They're kind of drawn in like a stereotypical way. I don't know. It just kind of, it irked me, to be honest. So even though my reading experience was a 3-star, like it was a good reading experience, I had fun with it, I could not acknowledge the problems with this book, because it definitely had those issues. The one saving grace of this book, where I thought like, okay, this is why I like the book, was the parallel between the ghost past and then this main character. His mom had died, her mom had died, and their dads had developed feelings for another person, and then they marry that person, and they're in the house, and both characters, the ghost and the living guy, had rejected this step-parent that they didn't want because they were still missing their loved one. And she tells him that she regrets it and that she doesn't want him to make the same mistake. And I won't tell you what he decides to do, but that was the one thing about this book that I thought was beautiful and was well done. But it also kind of goes with the whole, the girl's main role is to serve as the male's character development, while the girl doesn't really change throughout the book. So again, there's just a lot of weak points and like crutches of leaning on stereotypes that I do not approve of, but it was still fun. I probably will not keep this book. I will probably donate it to like the library. They have a shelf where people can just grab free books. But yeah, just be aware of those issues if that is something that is going to highly affect your reading experience, that this may be one to steer clear of. Prompt 7 and 8 were the hardest one for me to do. Oh my, I was so scared, because the first part of the prompt was to find a book that either had water, some sort of sea object like a shell, or the color blue on it. And then the second prompt that I combined it with was to do a feed scroll. So you had to go on whatever social media of your choice, scroll through the images, and the first one that had a book that you had access to, like from your library or your personal library or an ebook or whatever the case may be that you had access to, you had to read. So I was doing that, and at first I was like, okay, one, it's got to fit both of these prompts. So I knew going in that it wasn't necessarily going to be the first one I saw. But then the second thing was that I wanted a physical book. Well, the first physical book that I had access to was The Invisible Library, which had extremely tiny, like 8-point looking font, and was over 300 pages. I started it, got like 2 pages, realized there was no way I was going to finish it within 7 hours. So then I was like, okay, I will just go and I will do the actual first book that I saw. And I didn't know if I actually owned it or not. So I searched on my Kindle. I did own it. And I was also able to get the audiobook from Hoopla. So I was super excited because I was able to listen to it all in about 3.5, 4 hours that day. That's how I won the readathon. If I had had any other book where I didn't have access to an audiobook, it would not have happened. That book was History Is All You Left Me by Adam Silvera. I do like Adam Silvera. I liked More Happy Than Not, even though it's a sad book. I thought it was very interesting with the sci-fi element. A lot of his books do have some sort of sci-fi element, but more so feel very contemporary to me. This book was contemporary. There was no sci-fi element. This book is also not a happy romance at all. History Is All You Left Me is about a teenager whose boyfriend drowned and died. And so he is reflecting on all of their past moments together. I really enjoyed the first 25% of the book, where you did have the back and forth of him going to the funeral and really missing this guy, but then you also got to see how their friendship turned into a romance, and they had both came out to each other, and then their family, and just everything was super cute and well done. Then we get to the middle 50%, like from 25% to like, honestly, to like 90%, dragged for me. I had already learned during the first 25% that the character was struggling with OCD and anxiety and was just constantly obsessing over all the memories that he had with his boyfriend. Here's the thing too. They were exes. They were not together when he died. He had already went off to college and was with this other person. And that person was also at the funeral. So during that like middle part, they are interacting with each other and they're bonding over their memories that they shared with this guy and kind of figuring out why the guy was attracted to each of them. And then there's some unhealthy things that happen where you're basically... I can't really say it without spoilers. So, because this is the last book in this review, I will say for those of you who do not want any spoilers that I gave it a 2-star. I liked the first little portion. I did not like the last bit. The last like 10% of the book started to pick up a little bit, and you got to see that the main character, who was still living, had some secrets that he was withholding from the reader. So those get revealed. Lots of OCD and depression stuff happening in this story. And you get to see kind of towards the end that he realizes he needs to get help and mourn in a more healthy way. But you don't actually see it. It's just referenced that it's going to happen rather than that being a part of the book, which is more so what I would have expected based off the blurb for it to be actually happening in the book. The mood overall was a serious downer. The first 25%, again, it was like really cute and sweet and the romance was great and it did give you all the feels. But then it was just like for the next 75%. So I don't recommend this book if you're looking for a happy romance because you're not going to get it. So yeah, I gave this a 2-star. If you want to stick around, I'll give you some more specifics, but otherwise the rest is just going to be spoils. I'm not going to say anything important at the end of this video, so you can just go ahead and go if you don't want any spoilers for this. So spoilers! You better be gone if you don't want them. So he sleeps with the guy, Jackson, that was also dating this guy, which I understand that if you're in mourning, that you would grow close to someone that's experiencing the same thing. However, it's revenge sex for him because Jackson and the ex had shared this personal moment together that he had also shared with the guy. So the guy that died's name is Theo. And Theo there was like these different types of kisses and stuff. Like what they call Eskimo kisses and like the eyelash one where like your eyelashes do it. I can't remember what all of them are called. But anyway, there was like different ones. And there was one like a zombie kiss or something. It was like, ah, like you bite the cheek. I don't know. But anyway, it was something that our main character, like him and his family did it like as a joke. So then he did it with Theo, and then Theo shared that with this guy Jackson. So he felt betrayed. So he has revenge sex on the dead. And I'm just like, that's so not healthy. So not healthy. And then in the latter part of the book, we find out that our main character had already started to move on. Like he really thought that Theo was going to be in game and that once he got done with college, he would come back to them. There is a little bit of an age difference, but I don't know how much. It was less, I would say it was less than 2 years, because I believe our main character was 17 and the other character was either, I think he might have been 19, which also means that it was a minor with an adult, which I'm not a fan of, but I do understand that when it comes to like LGBT romances, it's very, very frequent that there is a sort of age gap. There's a little bit more nuance. Then you find out he's also been with his friend Wade while Theo was off away in college. Wade is one of their best friends in the group. He had become a bit of a third wheel whenever the main character was dating Theo. But then when Theo went to college, then the main character and him started to bond, so then they're all of a sudden having sex. Then our main character realizes that he's kind of using Wade as a crutch as well, and he also feels bad about sleeping with Jackson, especially because he still had feelings for Wade, but they weren't in a committed relationship. They hadn't defined it. So as far as Wade knew, they were just having sex even though he wanted more. And he basically tells the main character, like, I'm not good with this anymore. Like, you either want to be with me or you don't. I liked Wade. And then our main character kind of realizes that he is slightly using Wade, and he definitely used Jackson. There is some apologies that take place. There's a little bit of character development where we see that there is hope at the end of the tunnel. And then I believe it jumps like a year later and they are like happy for now type. So I liked that there was hope at the end of it and that there was a little bit of like a romance closing, but it was just so moody and dark for the entire book that I couldn't give it more than 2 stars. So that's all I have to say about the books that I read for the 24-hour Bookopoly Readathon. Again, if you want to hear more about She Wore Red Trainers, then definitely check out that vlog video. But until then, I'll see y'all next time. Bye!